Hey, everybody. It's good to be here on the Monday after what was a amazing Friday. It's I'll tell you what, Immaculate, it's good to see you here. I don't think in about 40 plus years of being around sports that I saw more crazy that happened in 48 hours than what happened between Thursday night and Friday, where people went, good to see you too. Uh, maybe we are, I don't know if we'll have a master class. It's just going to be fun. It'll be fun. Um, I mean, things changed in minutes. Um, Suddenly, it seems Fox had enough money to pay to bring Oregon and Washington on board. Then we saw the move to bring Arizona State, Utah, and we knew Colorado had already gone. So in this in the space of about 48 hours, a 103-year-old conference poof went up in smoke. So what happens next, right? I think that's where we have to pick up the story. And right now, it looks like Stanford and Cal are not ready. Well, they may be ready, but the Big Ten is not ready to add them anytime soon. Oregon, Washington, they really thought, yeah, they basically, I'm just looking at your question here. Let me get it. There it is. Okay. I had to go low to get Oregon. Much contract. Probably be big brands. Yeah, the thing that Oregon and Washington took a smaller cut, and depending upon who you believe, it was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 million dollars for them to leave the conference. And then of course 31.7 is what took Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado to the Big 12. So now it's become a battle between Fox and ESPN at this point. Fox has all the Big Ten content. ESPN has the SEC content, and then we've got split ESPN and Fox split in the Big 12, and the ACC has the ACC has ESPN. So there we go from that standpoint. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here, but I know that FSU is trying to get out of their deal or try to improve it in one way, shape, or form. There's a number of ACC teams that are doing the same thing, but they're doing it behind, in a much more quiet way than Florida State is doing. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. I don't see Stanford and Cal getting to the Big Ten anytime soon, frankly, if ever. They had the opportunity. I mean, I think Cal and Stanford would have gone for even less money than Oregon and Washington. So they could perhaps have scooped all of the conference, without Oregon State and Washington State, but they chose not to do that. So that leads me to believe that the Big Ten is kind of waiting to find out what happens with the ACC down the road. They can take a deep breath. They've got 4 schools out west in the Big Ten now. And we'll see. What do I think that, hang on one second. There we go. What do you think about the issue of Stanford? It's going to be a problem because, look, if the Big Ten wanted Stanford or Oregon, I'm sorry, Stanford or Cal, right? you just have to have a board of regents meeting. Stanford is a private institution. They'd sign that deal in a heartbeat. If Cal went from that standpoint, they too would be in there, but that's not what's going to happen anytime soon. The University of Chicago left the BTA to be part of the IPLC. Yeah. I don't think that affects, I mean, again, I don't think it affects their relationship with the Big Ten, because it's just University of Chicago's relationship is just a research one. So, which is not, I don't want to diminish that, which is of course important to the University of Chicago, fine institution, but I don't think that impacts whether Stanford would get in or would not. I think Stanford at this point is, I think that they feel, and I'm saying they, meaning the networks, they feel that the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, is far more a professional sports market than it is a college market. You may remember that they had the college football playoff championship game in San Francisco a few years back, and it wasn't an overwhelming success. So we'll see how that's done. Yeah, Cal did leave that. You're right about that. I just think that, I think that your point is good, Immaculate. It's right now, if you can't bring value from a strategic point, and that's where we're talking now. Think of this kind of like a chessboard, right? If you look at it, you've got the Big Ten has positioned themselves as a national conference. They've got, coast to coast, they're covered. ESPN is heavily leans to the south into, the Northeast at this point. And so I think they're strategically, and then of course they've got the Big 12, which is, takes some Midwest and some Mountain West, and then of course they've got the Arizona schools. So I think ESPN's covered with what they've got. And I think everybody's going to settle down, or let this thing settle down for a little while, just to kind of get a feel for what goes on. Because think about it, the Big 12 just took on 8 new schools. That they literally doubled the conference. Okay, so it's gonna, just to get, there's gonna be a "hello, my name is" tag on everybody out there, just to get them interested in what's going on. So they need to know, where those where those institutions are, get the fan bases integrated, and I think that'll be some fun for the folks out at the Big 12. The Big Ten. The Big Ten actually had some seriously strong relationships out in the out in the West Coast, in the Seattle and Oregon areas long ago. They've always had a big presence in Southern California, so it's quite frankly possible that when Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan or Wisconsin goes out to play in Los Angeles, there may be more fans there rooting for Michigan or Ohio State or Wisconsin than there will be for USC or UCLA. So that's going to be an interesting, trip out there. The deal with Washington and Oregon could very well have been to just solidify the possibility of having some later games. We remember Pac-12 After Dark. Well, Pac-12 After Dark could become Big Ten After Dark, but that's not going to be solidified until they still have to finish that NBC contract, which will be done, I imagine, before the season begins. And then, of course, Fox will be able to figure that out. But remember, everything kind of changes in 2025, because that's when the playoff, the college football playoff TV rights are up. And so there'll be some heavy-duty negotiating and heavy-duty bidding between Fox and ESPN to see where that goes. Pardon me for drinking. But I think that's where we've got things going at this point. So it'll be fun to see how that works out. I think the thing to me that bothers me is the number of Olympic sports that are going to be lost. Let's see what you got here. I think it will take more of those NBC slots that Big Ten schools were going to have to fill. Some of them weren't so happy that UNLW or help carry that load. Yeah, I mean, look, they'll get USC and they'll get UCLA some you know, clock in the here in the East, and yeah, that will definitely help carry the load in that regard. So yeah, I think you're right about that. That'll help them. Shelby, good chance to be here. I see where you're saying that, but think about this. If you don't have a lot of slots left, if you want to get to 24, which is where I think most people think that the SEC and the SEC and the Big Ten are headed. I don't think that. Well, actually, I just don't think that the Big 12 at this point in time want to give up those two of those slots towards to Washington State and Oregon State. Now, that being said, I feel badly for Washington State and Oregon State because they're fine schools and a lot of good fans out there. But I just don't know. Talking the AAC, the American Conference, with that last comment. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see, Mike Oresco and the folks out at the AAC are pretty aggressive. I think they would take them in a heartbeat. And because of the amount of money, each AAC team gets $7 million, okay? Each Mountain West team gets $4 million. So could I see a situation where the AAC could perhaps bump that more? Then, yeah, I think that might be where we go. All right. Hey, Greg, how you doing? To get to 24, wouldn't the SEC and the Big and have to raid the Big 12? It's possible, but it's also possible that they could raid the ACC. So I think that's I'm sorry, the ACC is what I meant to say. I wouldn't be surprised that the SEC or the Big 10 looks back at some schools in the Big 12. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. I know that they certainly Kansas would be one, Utah would be one. There could be a number of them. I mean, that they take a look at. SEC same way. But we'll have to take a look and see, what's available. What do we got here? But, it's a good point, Greg. It's a very good point. The AAC has it in their contract to get renegotiated deal if the value goes up. Yes, and that's a very good point, because if you bring Stanford, Cal, and Oregon State and Washington State into the AAC, then they're probably going to be in the neighborhood of they could bring it into the neighborhood of somewhere around probably 10. They could get $3 million more per school, I think, out of ESPN for that. And I think they, 10 or 12, something like that. And I think that would probably be a something that would be a good deal. And it would give the AAC, a presence that would give them at least 3 of the time zones, because they'd be able to do a noon game, they could do a 3:30 game, and then they could do a 7:30 Eastern time game. So yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility. Memphis, hey, 901 LC33. I think Memphis has a good future. I don't know what's going to happen with it. I think that you keep an eye on what Michael Resco and the AAC do. I do think that they're going to be very aggressive at trying to talk Stanford and Cal, as well as Oregon State and Washington State into joining that conference. And I don't know if it's going to be a merger, a partnership, or what. They could keep alive a Power Five conference for at least a year. If they could do that, and then they get to past 2025, whether it stays a Power Five conference, they'd change the name. It wouldn't be the Pac anything. It would be the Pacific American Conference, and it could still be the Pac. So I don't know, but I think that Memphis, like a lot of schools, like Tulane and SMU and South Florida and some of those others, they have a bright future. But it's man, if we're in a situation where we are right now, where you've got conferences that are looking to add, they're not looking in the G5 anymore. They're looking to add from what's left of some of these Power Fives. And that scares me as someone who is a USF fan and USF supporter, that Memphis and USF and Tulane and some of those schools, SMU, who were set to move, may not be in there. So I would be rooting for Mike Oresco and the AAC to see if they can land a Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State, because it'd be a big win. I mean, think about it. If Memphis got to play Stanford there in the Liberty Bowl, that'd be kind of a fun situation, and it would. I guarantee you, a Memphis Stanford game would probably draw some pretty good ratings. So, yeah, 100%. And of course, Memphis has an outstanding basketball program too. So, right now there's only going to be a few seats left at the table, and we're going to have to see how that goes. So let's see if they can be creative. You think the AAC has a pretty future? I do. Memphis might be able to get the final phase of the Big 12's move into consolidation. I think Brett Yormark has really put in. Here's the thing. I do think that Brett Yormark wants UConn. I mean, he has made it abundantly clear that he wants UConn. That could give Memphis a problem in that regard. So keep an eye on UConn. Keep an eye on what's going on with Yormark. But I think that it depends on what's available. If the ACC decides to have comes apart at the seams, there may be something there. So that's what I'm saying. I'm concerned about Memphis. I'm concerned about Tulane, South Florida, some of these other schools who are working hard to get into the next conference realignment. And right now, nobody's looking at the G5s. And right now, the Pac is the only one who is looking at the G5s. Memphis has a great geographic location for them, absolutely. And they've got stadium work on the way. Again, yeah. Look, I know shade on Memphis. Memphis is a fine institution, good fan base, all of that. But there's, look at this. There's going to be a lot of schools that are going to be overlooked, and that's kind of the problem. The Pac should add 5 AAC programs, and then next year, 5, Mountain West Conference. Here's the problem, Greg, and I think I see your point. The reason why a partnership / merger makes more sense than necessarily that is because let's say AAC made a deal with the Pac to create, to not lose that Power 5 status, right? Which they don't want to do. If the AAC programs want to leave, it's going to cost them between $10 and $12 million. Then next year, it's going to cost the 5 Mountain West Conference teams about $17 or $18 million. Okay, so are you going to leave that to, in essence, get $10 or $12 million? Because that's about, you might even top at 15, but that may be about the max, right? So that would be a very dangerous thing. That's why I'm saying if Mike Oresco is able to talk the 4 schools left in the pack into becoming part of the the AAC, and they are able to protect that Power 5 autonomous status, that would probably be a better way to get there, because then let's say Memphis wouldn't have to pay anything. You'd already be in the conference. So that would be the way to go. The reason I'm not saying that the Mountain West is because the Mountain West only the Mountain West Conference only accounts for about 12% of the population and in TV homes. So you're really not gaining much if you did a deal with the Mountain West. It might be the only thing that Oregon State and Washington State can do. And so I think that's why the AAC might be a little bit more attractive to them, because as Immaculate said, and he's right, that you can renegotiate the contract and maybe bump up that money a bit. So it's more along the lines of can you make something more attractive if you if you make a merger / partnership / whatever that gets around signing, breaking a grant of rights. You would have to sign a new, it would be an interesting contract sign that they would have to do, a partnership that would basically, you wouldn't be signing a grant of rights, because the 4 schools in the pack would basically be giving some of their intellectual properties and everything. They'd sign it over to the AAC partnership. So it would be very complex, but it certainly, you have a year to work on it. So you could do that in that way, and maybe hold on to the Power 5 status, which is what I'm sure, as someone, Greg, is a fan of Memphis, that you would want that to happen. You don't want to take those schools on or have to pay money to go into something where you actually end up losing. Or let's say the Power 5 conference status goes away, so you haven't gained anything at that point. Pardon me, guys, I sore throat this morning. I think the people will like the storyline of OSU and WSU redeeming themselves in the ACC. The ACC is national tournament for conference championship if ranking side of it. 100%. I mean, look, you had UCF, you had Cincinnati, you had Tulane win championships. You had all of them in New Year's Six bowl games. They've had all of the. I mean, there's been no other. I mean, the AAC's record in New Year's Six bowl games has been better than some of the Power 5 conferences. So I think that the AAC has proven. And look at this. I mean, the other thing is, we just talked about it. You had UCF, you had Cincinnati, you had Tulane. You had 3 different schools in a G5 conference that played with the big boys and won. So it's definitely an interesting situation. And you're right; it would be a great storyline for OSU and Washington State to be there. And the funny thing is, Oregon State could win this year's Pac-12. I mean, they've got a very talented dark horse, team there that might end up winning. Be really interesting. Yeah, would be in everybody in the AAC's benefit if those 4 schools were to work out a way to make it happen. And I know I tweeted out this morning that they are seriously pushing and talking. Now, here's the problem. Okay, who's in charge at the Pac-12? Our assumption is at the moment George Kliavkoff, and I have not gotten a read on him. The other thing is that they have interim presidents at Stanford and I believe at Washington, maybe. I do know that they don't. That Washington State's president is the one person who's had the longest stint out there, and he's the one who's got the worst, situation from a standpoint of budgeting. They're upside down in that situation, which is not where you want to be. So I don't, when you have four schools, I guess, super majority's three. So if the AAC makes the case and Stanford, Cal, and Oregon State, vote to accept it, well then they'll bring Oregon, Washington State along for the ride. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. And this whole SEC, Big Ten, ESPN, Fox fight has become something that may or may not kill a lot of college football. Food for thought, WSU president is a PAC representation on the CFP board of managers as well. Yeah, it's true. It is true. And that's not for nothing, Immaculate. You're right in that point. It's not going to hurt for sure to have a president on the CFP board of managers. The one thing also, Michael Kelly, who is the athletic director now at the University of South Florida, was the president of the CFP board, and it was Michael's job to serve in the capacity of getting things together there. So we'll see how that could help too. I mean, that he of course works very closely with Commissioner Resco of the AAC. Our ASU President Michael Crow, AD, most stupid people. They didn't help each other. Let's put it that way. They made some mistakes for sure, but they're not the only ones. I mean, it's not fair to put everything out on them. I think ASU and Utah wanted to be. I mean, they promised that they were going to give the conference every last, opportunity to save itself. And in some regards, to be fair, ASU and Utah can walk away with their heads up saying, you know what, we did everything humanly possible to keep this conference alive, and we just couldn't make it work. So in that regard, I think Michael Crow and of course the people at Utah have that going for them, that they wanted to keep it alive. They couldn't keep it alive. And so they did what was the most responsible thing to do, and that was to accept the Big 12's invite. So they got on Lifeline by default, but in fairness, ASU and Utah are not exactly chopped liver. So I think they were good adds to the Big 12. And sometimes, as I say, you had Oregon who was in there, and everybody at Oregon and Washington were saying, don't worry, remember that whole situation. We're in it. We're going to stay. We got, they said it all. They said all the right things until the time came when, they said we're out of here. So I think, from a respect standpoint, I respect Crow and the president at Utah just for the very situation of saying, hey, look, we're going to be here till the end, and if the end happens, which it did, then we'll go. And I'm sure, quite frankly, in a year, 2 years, when they're playing in the conference, I don't think anybody will even worry about it anymore. Look, if you're a fan of a Big 12 fan, you're going to have a lot of fun going to Phoenix, Arizona, and Tempe, and enjoy going there for the football stadium is a great place to watch a football game. It really is a cool place. So, hard feelings maybe for a little bit, perhaps, but at the end of the day, as I say, I respect what ASU and Utah tried to do. They were true to their word, and that's more than you can say for a lot of the folks involved in this whole deal. So there you go in that regard. But Greg, you bring up a good point. If WSU is talking to the AAC at some point, at basically 2 votes for the AAC politics, 2 votes for the, it definitely helps. And the bigger the conference standpoint, they got 14, they'd be 18 if they added all 4. So there you go from that standpoint. And they Immaculate, they also have more AAU schools than any other G5 conference as well, which fits with Stanford or what fits with Cal. Look, Stanford has an $18 billion endowment. Okay, that's not even in the research area. That's $18 billion that they could float their athletic program on, part of it. I don't get me wrong; they're not going to spend $1 billion on their athletic department, but a lot of people forget the fact that Stanford has won more titles in college sports than and the Olympic sports as well. Tiger Woods was a graduate out there, at Stanford, and a number of John McEnroe. I mean, they put out some great athletes, and they had a decent football program from time to time. How quickly? Well, we know with the Pac-4 Street 24, probably pretty quickly. They don't have a lot of time. They've got to finish this season, but if you're scheduling for 2025, and that's where we are right now, that's the problem. Is you're scheduling for 2025. The Cal head football coach came out over the weekend and said, "Look, I've got all kinds of recruits in here, all kinds of folks who want to play football at Cal. I don't know who we're going to play in 2025." So that's why I think the next month is going to be very, very important, and we probably will find out within the next month. Because again, they can't. They got schedules. They got to do schedules, and schedules take time. So you're gonna have to know pretty soon what's going to happen. That's why another thing why I'm thinking that them adding schools would take time, because you have to be invited. You have to make we know that the applications have gone in, but you have to be invited. And then once you're invited, you have to be accepted. And once you're accepted, then you have to, let your conference know. So in theory, if you were going to go with the American schools would have to let the conference know, and at that point, then pay the money to get out, and probably not be available until 2025. So that's why I'm saying the soft landing here is going to be the acceptance of some sort of partnership or some sort of alliance that ties these conferences to these 4 schools. That's the seamless way to do it. Now, what that may mean is there may not be a grant of rights between those schools, other than allowing them to deal with ESPN to work on a conference, on a schedule. So that may be it. The reason I'm saying they won't be a grant of rights is because the AAC already has a grant of rights. So as Immaculate, you put out earlier, and you're right, the changing of that grant of rights, or the addition of schools, allows them to ask for a bump. And so that's probably the way they would do it. I think that they would be able to, as I say, if you want to call it merger, you want to call it partnership, doesn't matter. They can work that out. They got lawyers that can do it. The key here is, do they want to do it? I'm talking about the schools want to do it. If if the schools want to do it, then whatever George Yakov wants is meaningless. It's what the schools want to do, okay? Because they are the presidents of those 4 institutions decide what happens, not the commissioner. Wait a minute, I got there you go. Yeah, I don't think they have a media deal for the next football season. No, they don't. And they, if they did what you would suggest, and I agree with you, okay, if they went the AAC, then they would have to, because the media deal would be with ESPN, and because the AAC has that deal, so the deal would be to onboard them by ESPN, which I don't think ESPN would have any trouble with. I think if ESPN could pull Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State off the board, that would leave them in a really good position for keeping their West Coast presence out there. And they, the one that they thought might have been taken away from them from Fox. So strategically, it might make more sense for them to do that. And so, yeah, it would 100% be an interesting thing to see. 24, yeah, the 24 season is in doubt too. Yeah, the 24 season is when the conference, their TV deal ends right in August. So this time next year they don't have, this time next year they'll only have 4 teams. So you're right, 100%. That's what I'm saying about they've got this year, 2023, to negotiate their way into what they're going to be doing in 2024. So we'll have to see how that goes, but it can take some time. Okay, Greg, what you got? If the ACC added any Pac schools, would that give the opportunity for FSU and others to get out of the ACC? I'm sorry, I was sending. I think that if they add schools, that would the grant of rights for the ACC, which I don't have in front of me, so I don't have it. I'll have to look at that, Greg, but I don't think that would. Okay, I don't think it would give them an opportunity to make more money, in theory, but I don't know. But I don't know how much Stanford and Cal and Washington State and Oregon State bring to the party for the ACC. Now, here's where that might work. Okay, we know that the Big 10 network, the Big 12, Pac-12 network. Let me get it straight here. The Pac-12 network is going to go out of business at the end of the season. If, and this is a huge if when it went out of business, if it were to be taken over by the ACC, then and combined with their network, then it would just become the ACC network. The network would be much. You could get more money out of the network. So how much more money is debatable. Okay, I mean, I've heard all kinds of crazy things, but the point is there could be extra revenue garnered by an ACC takeover of that network. The amount, I don't know. Is it significant? It's not insignificant, but if it's got to be more than just, a little bit. That's a 50-50 deal between ESPN and the ACC network. So the short answer to your question, Greg, is the opportunity for them and others to get out. I don't think that's likely. The incentive to maybe do the deal with the ACC is potentially that there would be more money there, more money to the point where that would make Florida State and Clemson happy. Probably unlikely, but it would be a step in the direction from that standpoint. But, it's not going to get them to the SEC money. It's not going to get them to, it's not going to get them to the, for sure, the Big Ten money. So we'll see. But right now, I mean, basically everybody's floating and trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And And for the Pac-12, like we said, there's a, could you add schools? The answer to the question is yes, but, and the yes, but is that both of you guys have pointed out, as did so many other people here, that you can't do it and expect those schools to come in next year. It just doesn't. It's way too quick. It's just not going to happen. So that leads me to believe that some sort of merger / partnership / I hasten to use the term alliance after what's gone on, will have to happen somehow, some way. And I think that's the cleanest way to make it work. And Immaculate and has been fantastic. You've given us some good food for thought. The AAC could do it, and the PAC would then become part of the ACC and AAC. Man, guys, so many letters here. I'm sorry, guys. The AAC, the American. We'll just call it the American. The American and the PAC could form a partnership that's going to develop into a merger, and that would then likely keep those schools, all those 4 schools, in there. Why doesn't it work for the Mountain West? Because it adds little to no value to the Mountain West. I mean, let's just say, for the sake of argument, the Mountain West is $4 million a year per school. If you added Stanford and you added Cal and you added Washington State and Oregon State to it, it may take up to 8, maybe 9. It's because of the fact that you just don't get to as many homes, and that's where the problem comes for them. So we're going to see in the next, as I said, next few weeks. My guess is sometime by Labor Day, we'll probably see what has happened or what is going to happen to the PAC after that. But right now, anything's possible for sure. Mountain West and PAC merging together still has the same problem the PAC already had, and that's weaker lineup. Exactly, you're right, 100%. It's not. It just doesn't. It doesn't fit. I mean, it doesn't make sense for them. It doesn't make sense for either of them, honestly. I mean, yeah. I mean, logistically, yeah, but those schools aren't that. I mean, they're not like they're next door to each other. So it is. It would be weaker. It would be much weaker, and it wouldn't necessarily enhance. As I said before, it's not going to enhance them enough to make them even close to what they want. So, could Stanford in the ACC entice Notre Dame? Doubtful. In the conference, the Notre Dame supposedly has to join the ACC. If they join a conference, that's really there are clauses to get them out of that. I know that for a fact, because if Notre Dame, but look, Notre Dame has no interest in becoming, a member of any conference. So I don't think that's going to be something that anybody has to worry about. Stanford to the ACC, it might be a good thing for Stanford. Because think about it, they'd be in the same conference with Duke and North Carolina, and some of the blue bloods of academia. So that part of it tracks pretty well. But getting in there and bringing Notre Dame with them, not likely. The ACC could have Notre Dame for 6 games a year at a price bump. Again, if they could, yeah, but I just don't think. I think Notre Dame's going to get Notre Dame's probably going to get $50 million from NBC. Notre Dame wasn't. I mean, NBC doesn't want to lose them, and so I think that would be a bit of a stretch. But Greg, anything's possible, buddy. We'll stay on top of it, right? They might get a 6th game if Stanford joins. That's the point. Yeah. It's an interesting idea. You're right. I mean, Notre Dame and Stanford, like Notre Dame and and USC has always enjoyed playing against each other. So yeah, that's an interesting thought. Hey, my buddies. Okay, the Big 12 Mafia. Gosh darn, finally figured out how to join the YouTube link. We're having fun here, buddy. And it's a, by the way, congratulations to the Big 12, to Brett Yermark, and to what he's been able to do to bring on board 4 more schools, Arizona State, of course, Colorado had been on there a week ahead of everybody else, and Utah. So it's going to be fun. We were talking about that a little earlier. The thing that's that I think is going to be interesting is, I mean, the conference had 8 schools. Okay, you're bringing on 8 more, so it's going to be fun to just figure out, where all these pieces fit. It's going to be scheduling. It's going to be fun. It's going to be, how do they break it up to make it, so that the travel is not as tough for some of these schools, because you've got, Central Florida and you've got Arizona in the same conference. My guess is that you're going to see the Olympic sports. There's going to be, probably a pod type situation where they'll play events that are like halfway in between. It doesn't affect the football, but it will affect how the games are played in the Olympic sports. And so I'm going to guess there's going to be some pod situations. They're exploring that. I know that the Big Ten is exploring it. I know that the SEC is exploring it. And so I'm certain that the Big 12 will do the same. It makes sense. You can't have kids going, from one end of the country to the other, back and forth all the time. You need to figure out how to make that work. And I think the pod concept is it. Greg's transplanted to North Carolina, living in Phoenix Valley. I'm excited to see the Big 12 football and basketball. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. Phoenix is a wonderful place. It's hot out there today, I'm sure. But yeah, you're going to see Big 12 basketball and Big 12 football. And, it's you're out there in the Valley of the Sun. It's beautiful. And Greg, have you been to the ASU football stadium there, where you look across you can see the mountain on the other side of it's the home side is the one with the press box. So you're looking over across at the mountain. I've actually seen people when I've been out there looking at watching the game off the mountain. So it's kind of a cool thing too. So it's Phoenix is a lovely area. Tempe, where ASU is a cool place. And I think that the Big 10, the Big 12 fan base and the Big 12 media is going to have a lot of fun making the trips out there. It's a good trip. And then for those who are ASU, I mean, there's going to be some fun spots. You get to go to some very interesting places, and you're going to have fun. You're going to see, fans from all over. So I think it's always good to get out and get to other campuses and get to see, other how other folks enjoy the games. And it's going to be their rivalries. There's also they're good fans, and that's the fun part. The fans, they'll take the game seriously, but they're not going to, when it's all over, people are going to be very polite and very nice to each other. I don't think you have to worry about that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And transplanted from UNC fan, well, that's a hard thing to follow UNC sports from Phoenix, but I'm sure, Greg, you've done your best. So let's see, boys and girls, we've been on here about 50 minutes. We are going to have, this show is actually, this is the, we got another question. It's transplant to Scottsdale. Okay, that's true, and pretty much everybody. Football and basketball issue games. Just as you men uh, reportedly supported football and basketball, Dillingham. I'll tell you what, Kenny Dillingham. Dillingham's going to be a good hire there. He gets it. He's young. He's ambitious. He is. He's a ridiculously amazing and tireless recruiter. So under 100%, you got a good guy there. It's somebody who's going to put. If anybody can make Arizona State football, back into a powerhouse, Dillingham can do it. As I say, he's one of the youngest coaches in college, major college football. So good on him. I hope him the best. He's a good dude, and without any question, I think ASU got lucky. They got a hire that's really, really amazing. So good on them, and we'll see how that he does. Sounds familiar. Transplant to Scottsdale. So yeah, it's like somebody saying, I retired to Florida. So that's true. You do have the ACC network, so you can cover, follow what's going on with, with the folks in Chapel Hill. So therein is a lot of fun. Well, look, guys, it's been a lot of fun today. We're going to start bringing this back. This podcast has been going on now for a little over 3.5 years, and we haven't done video. We've just done the audio portion. So starting later this week, we're going to start doing this, and you'll get an idea of when it starts and what happens, and we'll have some fun from that standpoint. Real quick, I know that there's some soccer fans on here today. Saw Lionel Messi last night play in a wild one. That game was 103 kickoff when Inter Miami took on Dallas out there in Frisco, Texas, and that was an amazing game. Earlier in the day, we saw the U.S. women not quite get past Norway in that game. So it was a good day for soccer yesterday. It's so hot for the U.S. women, but they did their best. This was not one of their better teams, and they got a little exposed there, and that was that was how it went. Lionel Messi now 7 goals in 4 games. Not a bad situation from Inter Miami. So that's pretty cool too. Well, I'm glad you did, Greg. We'd love to have you. We're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna have some guests as we go along the way, which is what we do. We've done on the podcast. We've had a lot of fun folks on. We've had the president of Showtime Entertainment Boxing. We talked about that situation. We've had CBS and NBC and a bunch of directors, producers, and broadcasters. So that's what we're kind of going to be doing now. We're going to have some fun with, and then we'll be taking your questions. You'll have a chance to talk to some of the top people in the business and pick their brains. And we can talk about streaming, which is what we've been doing is on the show is we talk about, streaming and what's, all kinds of different shows, entertainment shows. We'll mix it up a little bit. You'll have some entertainment people on here from time to time, people talking about their shows on Paramount Plus or Peacock or, in any number of places, be it, Netflix or even some of the British and outlets like Acorn and BritBox. So we'll have some fun, and we look forward to what we can do. Yeah, Messi's definitely making it look good. He's making it. I'll tell you what, he's making everybody look like they're, in a league that he's not in. Now it doesn't hurt that he has 2 of his Barcelona teammates on those teams, but I mean, you gotta love it when he scored 2 goals now off of set pieces, basically doing what Beckham used to do, when he was playing at Manchester United and some of the places that he played. But Messy's Messi. I mean, he's proving, that he still is capable of being a dominant force. Okay, so yeah, the interviews are going to be fun. We have folks on that know what they're talking about, and they enjoy it, and they will have some folks who sometimes we'll have some college broadcasters. One of the guys we're going to have on is Pete Medhurst. Now, some of you know Pete. He's a CBS broadcaster. He's also the voice of Navy sports, and he has called I think it's 25, maybe 26 consecutive Army Navy football games, and we can talk to him about Army Navy. We can talk to him about his job also with Washington Nationals. He's a broadcaster with them too. So we have guys like Eli Gold. Eli has been the voice of Alabama football for over 3 decades. So folks like that, national folks, regional folks, local folks, and I think that's what makes it fun, right? We want to be able to talk to some of these guys, hear some of what they thought's their best games. Some of my friends who are producers and directors, will talk to them about what goes on behind the scenes and some of the fun stuff we've had on at that point. So all kinds of fun, things will be coming down the pipeline. Well, it'll be fun. I don't know how impressive it'll be, but it'll be fun. We'll have fun. That's the key. Adam wants to know if there's going to be a Pac-12 merger. Adam, we've been talking about that a little bit. I really think that's really something that we're looking forward to. Yeah, I think that it's got to happen for them to survive. So let's see what you can see. Greg, retired Navy, go Navy, beat Army. If you have a chance, anybody, this is a bucket list thing I would suggest. An Army Navy game is a treat if you can get to see one. If you can't, it's just as much fun from a standpoint of a really cool day to go either to Annapolis to the Naval Academy and watch the game there, or up to West Point and watch the game right there on the Hudson River. I mean, both of those stadiums are fun. It's an incredible atmosphere, and so highly recommend if you get a chance. You should check that out. I mean, if you can't get to the Army Navy game, get that, but certainly the Navy and the Army, the Air Force Academy also out in Colorado Springs. So 3 places where you can go and watch a game and really enjoy it. So if you get a chance to do that, that's very cool. And I'm sure that Pete Medhurst will talk to you about. You have to be there, Greg, when Pete comes on to talk about Navy. He came on last year. We talked about it, and he came straight up and said, "Look, I don't think we're going to beat Army this year. Army's got a good football team, and they got rid of Coach Ken, so we'll have to see how that all shakes down." So you did go, okay. Oh, you lived in DC. All right, so you're down the street from me here. Okay, so yeah, isn't it? That's a great place to go watch a football game, and it's always fun to see the service academies play, and yeah. Oh, okay. Had Maryland season. Yeah. Well, I have many members of my family, my wife included, who are graduates of College Park, and it's Terrapins are amazing. Gary Willliams, one of my favorite people. When Gary used to coach Maryland, boy, I'll tell you, I was always afraid that he was going to have a heart attack, because it seemed like he was so amped up about what was going on that it was funny. Back in the old days, you might remember that Gary and Coach K didn't get along well, so there was an inner battle between Maryland and Duke. Not that Duke and Maryland were rivals, but certainly Coach K and Gary Williams didn't like each other. So that made for a fun rivalry in that regard. But turned out that Gary was one of the key people in talking the University of Maryland into joining the Big Ten. So that was happening. Of course, Gary was at one point in time, back when I used to do Big Ten football and basketball. Gary was one of the he was the head coach at the University of the Ohio State University. So before he came home to be the coach of Maryland. So there's that. Okay, boys and girls. Any final questions here before we get out of here today? So I got to tell you, you guys have really come up with some great questions. It's been a lot of fun, and I learn as much from you guys as hopefully you do from me. So by all means, it's good to have the interaction. So with that, okay, let's see, Greg, what do we got? Okay, yeah, that's true. He did. My favorite Lefty story, real quick, is you may recall this, Greg. Lefty got in trouble for Moses Malone, who was, of course, star player in the NBA and college. He had a situation where he what happened was Lefty was trying to get Moses Malone down in Petersburg had signed with Lefty. Then he went directly to the ABA, and Lefty was quoted in Sports Illustrated as saying that if he only had 2 weeks, he could have matched the number. So we'll see.